Hi, it's Anna, also known as the Crappy Childhood Fairy. We are now at the beginning of this great new era of understanding about the effects of childhood trauma. And I'm blown away, in a good way, by the explosion of research in this field. There are thousands of clinicians and researchers and social service professionals, and they're working at light speed to better understand the ways that we're affected as kids and later as adults. They're looking at the common patterns of health problems, the ADHD and the screwed up relationships, the brain fog, the emotional flashbacks. And the pieces are starting to all fit together now, and one of the huge culprits is not that we're bad people or screw-ups, it's brain dysregulation. And that is not our fault. And we can learn to re-regulate. And I mean, no one even knew this 6 or 7 years ago. This changes everything, right? So maybe you relate to this. The more I learn about the neurological aspect of childhood PTSD, the more I have to go back and replay not just what happened, but all the ways that I ever felt weird or different or like something was wrong with me, because what helped everyone else when they were struggling, like therapy, it didn't help me at all. It made me feel worse. And of course, I blame myself. I just thought if I would be a better person or try harder or work at it more, I could maybe get around the corner of this never-ending problem. But we were going about it all wrong. Almost everyone was. And yeah, so the big turning point in my life was when I learned to re-regulate my brain and in turn, my nervous system and emotions. Basically, I learned this by accident. And then years after that, I learned about new science that validated my own experience and explained why it worked, what was happening when that shift happened from totally frazzled and dysregulated to calm and feeling okay again. So I just want to share these with you, the findings that may be familiar to you or not, because they're very new. And I'm going to go over these because they could provide a missing link to why you are the way you are and why some of the forms of help you've tried may not have worked for you and could not have worked for you. So, first, recent research has shown that abuse, neglect, and other traumas cause brain changes in children. Studies from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control, Kaiser Permanente, Harvard University, University of San Francisco, and many, many institutions worldwide are contributing to a new understanding of how adverse events in childhood affect people throughout their lives. The damage caused by traumatic events used to be interpreted almost solely as psychological. And we now know that the damage is also neurological. It triggers changes to the brain and nervous system. And this damage in turn can cause cognitive impairment, emotional and social problems, chronic disease even. And though much of the damage can be reversed, it's important to be aware of how these events can have such a broad impact on every part of our lives. And it also helps you see why other people are the way they are. And once you understand this stuff, it's hard not to go around seeing it in all kinds of people. You're like, that kid can't pay attention, could be trauma. That girl is spaced out, trauma, probably. Road rage, definitely trauma. Overeating, yep, trauma. We get very busy diagnosing, which real scientists don't like, by the way. And they're right, that we should keep the focus on ourselves. But the second thing that research points to is that focusing on your childhood traumas will not by itself produce recovery. Now, talking to somebody, taking stock of what happened and getting a reality check on that is a useful first step. However, we now know that talking about the past and putting our attention on the bad memories can actually re-traumatize us. And in the re-traumatized state, it can be impossible to reason, remember, or integrate information. And this is one of the main reasons that talk therapy doesn't always work that well for trauma, and why other methods of recovery might be necessary. Also, focusing on childhood can emphasize blame, blaming your parents, blaming what happened in the past. This can all be true, but to focus on it, A, can't really fix you, and B, it can be its own kind of trap. The third thing we know now is that a powerful mechanism through which childhood PTSD wreaks havoc on us is through dysregulation of the brain and nervous system. These are measurable states that show up in brain scans and monitoring heart rhythm in relation to breathing, among other measures. And it can interrupt healthy body systems like hormones, your immune system, your metabolism. And dysregulation also affects emotions. It can show up as emotional flatness or emotional overreaction. And these, in turn, can dysregulate our behavior by making us prone to do things that hold us back and even re-traumatize us, things we bring on ourselves. Now, fourth, learning to re-regulate your brain, your body, your emotions, and your behaviors or your actions is possible. And this really changes our understanding of what treatments can actually make a difference. Traditional therapy often focuses on visiting memories and feeling your feelings, but with childhood PTSD, the problem is not so much the memories, but the unregulated emotions that they trigger. And in these hyper-emotional states, we can fall into or even crave self-defeating behaviors. The sooner we can recognize that this dysregulation or emotional flooding is happening, the sooner we can interrupt the flood. So when I learned this a few years ago, it gave me a framework to improve my own approach to healing. And I had pretty good results before, but whole life changes when these 4 puzzle pieces fell into place. And the gist of it is, healing dysregulation has to happen for any kind of therapy to be useful. And that once we're regulated, we have a new, like a superpower that allows us to be more aware, to make better decisions, and to take consistent actions that get us where we want to go instead of what it was like before. If you're like me, periods of great accomplishment and then getting all upset and kind of collapsing. You can't build on anything. You can't keep your head together enough of the time to really get anywhere. There's these down times. That's dysregulation. But even back then, we eventually did re-regulate. Now we can recognize what's going on faster and get re-regulated faster and spend less time struggling and more time just getting on with life. And this makes me want to cry because there is so much potential that's been trapped in all of us because we didn't know and there was no one to help us. But now we know. And there's hope and good stuff you can do, and we gotta tell other people. There's a lot of really discouraged people out there. So I feel a sense of urgency. So listen, having childhood PTSD is not your fault. You are not crazy. You're not trying to recreate your childhood, and you're not just trying to get attention. It's a brain injury. And you can start healing that. You don't have to keep the focus so much on what was done to you. It's helpful to know, but the solution isn't really connected to that. Yes, messed up families can pass on some dysfunctional beliefs and habits, but your past can't change, and your family is unlikely to change. But you can change, and everything now depends on your willingness to let go of that identity as a screwed up person and start building your life as your real, true self. Sounds really good, doesn't it?